Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to learn about SQL Server basics and what exactly RDBMS stands for and what is Relational Database Management System. And before we move into the session, I want you to say if you have any queries and questions, or if you have any course suggestions, or you want to learn any additional courses like Power BI, Tableau, or SQL Server, or data warehousing systems, you can always contact me on datacloudsolutions.co.uk. You can log on to my website and you can fill in a form and submit it, and I will be able to get back to you as quickly as possible. We have a team, and they will be able to assist you properly, enrolling you into various courses. And you can also write an email directly to contact@datacloudsolutions.co.uk, and we will be able to assist you further. So let's start our session today about SQL Server. So today we are going to learn about what is RDBMS, right? Why do we need SQL Server, and what is the history of RDBMS, and what is the real-time examples of RDBMS, right? Let's quickly jump into our session today without further ado. Now, I want you to understand a few things here before we jump into our session. I want you to understand. For example, you own a shop, you own a convenience store, right? This is your convenience store, and you're selling various items and various products inside your shop. Now, every day, 100 people visit your store, right? And you're able to properly figure out what exactly which products are going much, and what are the products that people are buying a lot, and what are the products that are actually not bought by as many people. And you will be able to figure out how to market the products that are actually uh, you know less in sales, right? So for that, you should do some analysis, and it is easy for you to these analysis on top of 100 people's data. But what if your shop has become now big, right? And you have thousands of products, right? And daily thousands of people are coming in to your store, and they are buying a lot of products, and you're not able to do any analysis on your own using your brain, because you cannot virtually store thousands of people's data inside your brain, right? And then pull up whenever you want and do analysis. This is when we need something called RDBMS. RDBMS. So RDBMS stands for Relational Database Management System. So now you guys don't know what is Relational Database Management System. I also don't know. Let's not figure it out everything at a time. So we will move to next concept. Okay, we will move to next concept, and slowly we'll be able to understand what is RDBMS, right? So before we understand RDBMS, let's understand something. So in 1920, an British innovator, right? He has created, who is that? Charles Babbage. Charles Babbage created a computer. So how does a computer know, right? How does the computer know what we want to achieve with that computer? Like, for example, how can we give instructions to the computer to do some calculations, right? That is why we have a language, right? We have created a language that computers can understand. Usually in 1920s, what they used to do is they used to feed binary data to the computer, right? This is a computer, and usually they used to feed binary data to the computer, and this is a costly operation, because there used to be a lot of people doing this binary coding, and then feeding that data into the computer. So what they are doing, they are converting the normal data, whatever the data in the real world, they're converting this data into binary data, and then supplying that binary data to the computer to do the calculations. Now this is a costly operation. A lot of people were used to do this operation. That is when in 1950, right? In 1950, they came up with language A, right? So IBM has came up with language A. Now language A was actually programming language, and it was able to convert the binary and then feeding the data into the computer properly without a lot of people doing the work. but it was a big flop due to few reasons, right? So what are those reasons? So language A, 1950, syntax problem, and execution problems, right? So there was a lot of syntax, right? A lot of syntax and problems with execution and logic building. So these were the main problems of the language A, right? And then what they created in 1960s, they came up with language B. Now this programming language was also a flop. Although it was a little bit upgrade from language A, but still there were few issues. Again, syntax was a problem, right? Execution problems and all of these problems. Now what they did in 1970, on top of these two languages that are existing, they created C language, right? So C language has immediately became hit, right? It has become, C language has become popular in 1970s. So why do we use a programming language in the first place? Now we understood the history of a language. Why do we use a programming language? Because to process the data, right? Previously, to process 10 plus 20, right? If we tell 10 plus 20 to the computer, right? If you feed this data, it is going to give 30. So how it is going to give 30? Now first people used to convert this 10 and this 20 into binary data, right? And then feed that binary data to the computer, and then the computer will give you binary data, and then convert that binary data into 30. So this was the process previously in olden days. Now gradually what they did, they have created language A. So the processing problem, whatever the processing that happens within the computer is taken over by language A, and then the processing was happening, and then language B was invented, and the same process was happening, and language C was also invented for main purpose of, right? For main purpose is to process the data. So what is the data? Data, whatever the data we are giving. For example, here we are giving 10 plus 20. So 10 is a data and 20 is a data point. So these two data points is being fed into the computer, and then the computer is actually doing calculations on top of whatever the calculation we mentioned here. Like here, for example, it is plus. So it is doing the plus, it is doing the addition, and it is giving the result as 30. Now, who is helping computer to do the processing is the programming languages. So programming languages is understandable by the computers, right? So what exactly the programming language here doing is processing, PROC, processing. So processing is done by a programming language like A, programming language like B, or C. Now they have created another language which is C++, right? They came up with C++ after C. Now, C++ is also a programming language which is more faster and more reliable than C language, right? Syntax, syntax wise, it is easy to, implement, and it is easy to write and less code. And there are, visible advantages over C language, right? Now, what all these languages are doing, I want you to carefully understand this point. All these languages are only processing data, right? So 10 plus 20 we are giving, and it is giving us 30. Everything is working fine and processing is doing greatly, right? But what is the problem here? Now, for example, the 30 is actually shown on your screen. The 30, whatever the 30 result is shown on your screen. Now, if you shut down your computer, if you shut down this computer and come back again, the 30 is gone. The 30, whatever the result, if you want to look at that result again, it is gone, because for momentarily it is going to store this 30 on your RAM, on your local system, and then it is going to remove as as soon as you have shut down your computer, it's going to remove this data from the RAM, because it has to start from scratch again when you start the computer. So this process is a problem here. Programming languages can do a lot of processing but cannot store the data, right? For this problem, right? For this problem, what they did is IBM computers. What they did is they have created something called a Relational Database Management System, right? So to store the data, there should be a system. So for that system, the IBM guys have came up with a system called Relational Database Management System. How did they came up to Relational Database Management System? What they did is, first they have created a railway, right? They have created a system. So let me just move this aside. So what they did is, to store the data, let's store the data on Notepad. So you all are aware of Notepad, right? It is available on Windows systems. It is available everywhere, like sticky notes or something like that. So Notepad is a flat file. It's a flat file system where you can store data like text, numbers, right? Anything. Now the problem here, right? So what exactly happening? They have created, the IBM people have came up with a application, a train ticketing system application, right? People are buying the tickets online, right? People are buying the tickets, and the people's data, the order data was storing inside the flat file on the Notepad. Now what is happening? Now if the customers are 100 people, it is okay to store the data here. But if there are millions of customers, you cannot be storing the data into the Notepad, because Notepad Notepad can only support to some extent. It cannot store millions of data inside one page. So essentially the problem was with the size. The size of the flat file is increasing, right? So as the people are increasing, as the customers are increasing, the size of the flat file is also increasing. So this became a problem. Now to tackle this problem, there were no systems at that point of time, and let's again discuss more into why flat file is a problem. Now one problem is the size, and another problem is, any person, any employee from the organization can actually log into the system and then delete this data, right? Easily they can delete this data. So security problem, right? These are the two main problems of storing the data on a flat file, right? So to resolve this problem, they have to come up with RDBMS. Not only size problem, not only security problem. If there are millions of rows, how will you be able to retrieve the data faster, right? If you want to go to some let's say some uh, 1948 something, this is the row number, and you want to go to 1948 row, how will you go? You have to go 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. You have to manually go to that row and then retrieve the data and that information associated with that row. So that has also become a problem, right? So for example, there is a class of 50 people, right? There's a class of 50 students, and if I give something to one person, one student, and now tomorrow he is absent, right? Tomorrow he is absent, how will I be able to retrieve that data? I gave something to this person, and tomorrow he didn't came up to the class and he was absent. Now he might have told to someone right? He might have told to someone that, hey, tomorrow if sir asks something, please give this to sir. But how do I know, right? How do I know there is no address for this thing that I gave to this student, right? He's absent today. So this is a problem, classic problem, right? This is a indexing problem. So what are index? Index is nothing but a address. So address, each row has an address, right? So that is also a problem. So indexing problem, size problem, and also security problem. So to tackle all of these problems, IBM has came up with RDBMS. Right, what is RDBMS? Let's understand RDBMS. So RDBMS consists of RDBMS consists of what? RDBMS, Relational Database Management System. So what does it consist? First, tables, rows, columns. So RDBMS is all about so RDBMS is all about tables, rows, and columns. So what do I mean by tables, rows, and columns? Now, if you one second. So RDBMS consists of various tables inside a database. So using the concept of RDBMS, we create a database, right? We create a database to store the data and to also retrieve the data. So storing the data and also on top of it retrieving the data. So with the help of RDBMS concepts, we are able to create a database inside the SQL server. It can be Oracle server, anything. And to access this data, to store the data and to retrieve the data, we use a language called SQL. So what is SQL? SQL is nothing but, right? SQL. SQL is nothing but structured query language. So what this language is used for? Using RDBMS, we have created a database. Right? These are the rules, few rules that we follow to effectively store the data and to efficiently retrieve the data faster. Right? For that purpose, we have created a database using RDBMS. But to communicate with this database, we need to have a language, right? We need to have a, for example, to communicate with computers, we need to have a programming language, isn't it? Like Java, C, to communicate with computers, right? To communicate with databases, what we need? We need a SQL language. So SQL language is a programming language. It's nothing but a programming language which is used to communicate with databases that are stored on a computers, right? C languages are directly used to communicate with computers, while SQL language is used to communicate with databases to insert the data. So to do all the CRUD operations. What is CRUD operations, right? So let's discuss about the CRUD operations as well. CRUD, create, read, update, and delete. To do all these operations on top of to do all these operations using SQL language on top of a database. What is database again? Database is nothing but tables, columns, and rows. So collection of tables is nothing but a database. So to interact with this database, to do all this, to perform all these operations, we use structured query language. So this is the efficient structured query language. This is efficient language in the world. Till now, there is no like there's no upgrade to the current SQL Server language, and there is no replacement to the SQL, right? We are still using SQL because it is most efficient language to interact with any databases which are RDBMS. RDBMS is nothing but Relational Database Management Systems, like Oracle, right? Like Oracle, SQL Server, Post, PostgreSQL. All of these are the softwares that are used to manage your databases within a server. So database is created on a computer, right? Database is created on a computer. So computer is able to understand C language, but how about a database? So for that purpose, we need structured query language. And what we do with the structured query language, we will use that language to perform CRUD operations: create, read, update, and delete, right? So hence SQL Server is a language. SQL structured query, SQL is a language, and Relational Database Management System is a concept. So this is a concept, this is a language, and using this language and using this concept, we will be able to store the data, and we will be able to retrieve the data faster. So this is all about today's session. This is all about SQL language, right? This is all about SQL language. This is all about Relational Database Management System. And what we can do with the SQL Server, we can do CRUD operations, and this is a brief history of what are programming languages, right? This is a brief history of programming languages, and why do we use programming languages, and why we don't use programming languages for databases, because we need to process the data, right? So for processing, we will obviously use a programming languages, but to store the data, we use all of these things here: Relational Database Management System and SQL language. So combination of these two will create a database which will be helpful for applications to run, right? Applications to run. For example, let's take an example. You're going to bank, right? You're going to bank, or maybe you're going to an ATM, and you put a and you inserted your card, and the machine is asking for PIN, or the machine is asking for account number, and you enter that account number, right? How does the machine know that you have an account here in their bank? Behind the machine, there is a database running, right? So with this database, it is going to retrieve your account details, it is going to retrieve your bank details and everything, account balance, and what is your loan amount and everything. This database is sitting somewhere, right, remotely, but using the connections, using the internet and everything over the internet, we will input the customer details inside the ATM machine, and that ATM machine, whatever the ATM machine, that is I mean, here in UK they call it cash machines. So what exactly the machine does is, it is going to read the data, and then it is going to supply the data to the database, and then it is going to retrieve the data. Whatever the data associated with that account number will be displayed on the ATM system. So this is the classic example of how databases actually work behind the scenes. So I hope you guys understand what is SQL Server and what is RDBMS in today's session. Again, if you have any queries and questions, you can always contact me on datacloudsolutions.co.uk. You can write an email at contact@datacloudsolutions.co.uk. You can visit my website and you can fill in the form. And I hope you guys understand today's session, and see you in the next session. Have a great day.